have an exciting presentation from Elaine Roberts. In January of 2003, the Columbus Regional Airport Authority was created to oversee Port Columbus, Rickenbacker, and Bolton airports. So they all kind of came under one umbrella. The total impact of all three of those airports is nearly 30,000 jobs, $793 million in payroll, and $2.7 billion in annual economic activity. That's a pretty big organization. Elaine was named the president and CEO and had been previously executive director at the Rhode Island Airport Corporation for 6 years, and before that she was in Indianapolis. She began her career in 1983 after graduating from 3 different colleges. She started at Western Kentucky University and got her bachelor's degree in English and sociology. Then she went to the University of Louisville and got a master's of science. And then the Indiana Purdue University in Indianapolis, where she got her JD law degree. So she's well educated. She is a member of the Columbus Partnership. And she was a former Rotarian. That's where I first met her. She was a member of our club a few years ago. And she's a big NFL and NASCAR fan. So I don't know if we'll hear about that today or not. Today, Elaine's probably going to discuss our newly renovated airport. I think it's an $80 million modernization project, as well as some other new initiatives. And help me welcome Elaine Roberts to Columbus Rotary today.
Thanks, Mike. He just hit about 5 of my slides, so we should have plenty of time for questions. I always enjoy, am I too close to the mic? Good? I always enjoy these luncheon speaking engagements, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. It's really one of the things I like best about my job. I get out in the community, meet a lot of great people, and talk about the thing that excites me the most, and that's our airports. Just my first slide, just briefly, as Mike mentioned, we do operate 3 airports. I came here in December of 2000 from Rhode Island, and the airports had, Port Columbus and Bolton Field, had prior to that been under the city of Columbus up until 1991. And then I was hired in 2000 to replace the retiring executive director. Unbeknownst to me, literally I'd been here about 3 months when County Commissioner Dewey Stokes and Mayor Michael Coleman decided that maybe we should look at a merger between the Rickenbacker Port Authority that ran Rickenbacker International Airport and the Columbus Airport Authority. I didn't even know where Rickenbacker was. I didn't know anything about it. And less than 2 years later, there was a merger for us to take over that operation, and both authorities were merged. So we do have the 3 airports. Rickenbacker is a joint-use military airport, cargo airport primarily, but we do have a little bit of passenger service with Allegiant, flying mostly low-cost vacation travel, not daily flights. They're usually 2 or 3 times a week. And I'll talk about the air service here in a few minutes. Rickenbacker, I'm not going to spend much time on it today because in the time we have allotted, it's hard to cover everything going on at Rickenbacker as well as Port Columbus. But Rickenbacker last year had its record year financially in the history of the airport. It was given to Franklin County in 1979 by the military, and it always operated at a big loss. And at the time of the merger, that was one of the reasons for bringing the 2 authorities together to reduce what had been about a $4 million annual deficit for operating and capital investment. Last year, on the operating side only, we generated $1.7 million profit. We still have a long way to go with investing in capital. There's about a $100 million program of capital investment planned over the next decade at Rickenbacker. But we have a lot of that growth and profitability was because we now have nonstop scheduled cargo flights every week, 2 a week from Dubai on Emirates, and 3 a week from Cathay Pacific, and 4 from them and 3 from Cargo Lux. 7 flights a week are coming in from Hong Kong nonstop to Rickenbacker. And now we're starting to see exports go out of the region via Rickenbacker. So that's really, it's a huge change, and there's a lot to tell on that story, but it's just not enough time today to cover it all. And then Bolton Field is a general aviation airport on the southwest side of Columbus, mostly private, smaller aircraft, some corporate aviation, some recreational flyers, and Columbus State has an aviation maintenance program down at Bolton as well. This is a slide that Mike talked about. He actually understated the economic impact of the airports just a little bit. 3 years ago, we updated did the economic impact study, and the reason the numbers are bigger is for the first time 3 years ago, we looked at all the businesses around Rickenbacker that were related to distribution and logistics and were there because of the airport. I'm sure most of you are not aware, but about 1 in 12, 1 in 13 jobs in Central Ohio are in the logistics field. So now that number for all 3 airports, the inland port, as we call it, around Rickenbacker, there's over 54,000 jobs, and probably today over a $7 billion annual economic impact. So the airports truly are a big economic engine, and in the case of Port Columbus, the front door to our city. So the one thing, and I'm not going to pick on anybody or name names, but anytime I go anywhere, whether it's a luncheon event like this or just out with friends, invariably air service comes up. And it's always, can't you get me a nonstop flight to XYZ? Today it was Albany, New York. I'm not picking on anybody, I'm just saying it was Albany, New York. So, first of all, air service is driven by the local economy. It's driven by the demographics locally. So the size of our market, the airlines really look at, in their vernacular, butts in seats. I'll get that right. It's all about bottom line for them. It's about profitability. So they're going to look at the demand from any given market. How many people want to fly to New York or Chicago or San Francisco or Albany, New York, and they're going to decide if it makes sense to put a flight in here on a daily basis and whether the seats will fill up and they'll make a profit. Columbus is growing, and you'll see a slide in a couple of minutes comparing us to Cincinnati and Cleveland, the 3 big airports serving our state mostly. And we are doing extremely well because we're the capital, we're a large university town, and our economy is growing, low unemployment, business is growing. All of that matters when it comes to air service. We have, does this surprise you, almost 150 daily nonstop flights. Nearly all of those are out of Port Columbus. There's, as I mentioned earlier, Allegiant, which is in the orange-red color, has year-round flights to 4 markets, I believe, in Florida, but they're usually 2 or 3 times a week. They're not daily service. And then they have some seasonal flights like Savannah and New Orleans, Myrtle Beach, and a few places like that. But for the most part, those flights are all out of Port Columbus. And we continue to try to grow the market's nonstop flights to the West Coast. As you can see up there in the yellow circles, Seattle's our #1 market without a nonstop flight. We have about 100 people a day each way going to the Seattle area from Columbus. And that's about the right number to really convince an airline to bring us a flight. The challenge has been that the West Coast flights have been really, really hard to get because of the distance. It takes a plane, a larger aircraft, and it pretty much takes it out of operation for the whole day just to do the round trip back and forth to Columbus to the West Coast. We just last summer were able to bring Oakland flight to the Bay Area from Southwest. Southwest was our largest carrier, but they also last year brought in a lot of growth. They added not only Oakland, but they added Dallas, Boston, and DC flights. We also just recently announced that Frontier is coming back to Columbus. I love their airplanes. If you've ever seen Frontier, they have the animals on the tail, different animals, wild animals. And they start service to Las Vegas, Denver, Philadelphia, and Orlando between late May and late June. So we're excited about them coming back. Other airlines that we're pretty optimistic about coming into Columbus, one is JetBlue. They were here before, and they've told us they're coming back. They just won't commit to a date. We continue to have regular conversations with JetBlue. The other one that excites me is Alaska, a brand new airline, new service to Seattle. They are headquartered and have a hub in Seattle, and we'd be able to go nonstop to Seattle and then connect up and down the West Coast with Alaska. So that's really exciting. I mentioned the market share. Southwest is about 35% of all of our passengers. Last year, we hit about 6.8 million passengers went through Port Columbus. This year, we will definitely cross 7 million. That'll be the second busiest year in our history. The busiest year was kind of a blip on the radar, if you will, when we had Skybus. How many of you remember Skybus? Headquartered, based here, they flew for 10 months, they added 1 million passengers, and we peaked at 7.7 million passengers in 2007-2008 before they went out of business. So this, without a Skybus factor, last year would have been the busiest year in our history, and this year will definitely pass that. There are 3 major airlines left in the United States because of airline mergers. So Delta merged with Northwest, United merged with Continental, and American merged with U.S. Airways. And U.S. Airways had merged with America West, who also used to have a small hub here in Columbus. So as a result of all that consolidation, the 3 big airlines plus Southwest fly about 90% of the passengers in the United States. So what this slide tells you is that we are very well positioned with all 4 of those airlines with really almost equal shares. American is 27%, Delta's 23%, United 14%, and then Southwest, as I mentioned, at 35%. Most airports would die for that kind of a chart. When you have one airline that dominates your market, you end up with some of the highest airfares in the country. And that's exactly what happened to Cincinnati. Cincinnati was a Delta hub. So from the business traveler perspective, you had a lot of flights. Many of them were smaller 50-seat regional jets feeding the hub in Cincinnati. But if you were from Cincinnati and you got to fly nonstop, they used to have, I think it was almost 700 daily flights. Today, they are smaller than Columbus. They have fewer passengers than Columbus, and they have fewer flights than Columbus. So that, when I'm asked frequently, when are we going to get a hub? Well, first of all, there aren't really hardly any new hubs being created, just the opposite. With mergers, airlines are getting rid of their hubs. So Delta got rid of the Cincinnati hub. They still serve Cincinnati. They still are the largest airline, but they don't have 600 flights a day. Delta also closed their hub in Memphis. Memphis used to be a Northwest hub. Why would they do that? Well, when they merged with Northwest, they also inherited the big hub in Detroit, which is a beautiful new terminal, was a Northwest hub, and has a whole lot more flights and has a lot of international connections. So Cincinnati was too close to Detroit, so they closed Cincinnati's hub. Same thing with Memphis. It's too close to Atlanta. They have the world's largest airport, busiest airport in Atlanta. Why did they need a hub in Memphis? So that's what's going on in our industry. And so unless a new airline decides to start up in Columbus like a Skybus, it's highly unlikely that we're going to have a hub. And we're actually in pretty good shape even without one. This is the last slide I have on air service, but just to show you, seats is another way we look at capacity from an air service standpoint. It's not just the number of flights, because if the planes are bigger, Southwest flies larger aircraft than the smaller 50 or 70 seat regional jets. So when you look at all the seats in the 3 big airports, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland has 32% of all the seats. This was at the end of last year without us getting Frontier. We had 27% and Cincinnati had 24%. And then you can see the pie chart, how it's balanced. And you can see with Cincinnati, Delta still has over half the seats in Cincinnati. So that's just a little bit on air service. I'll be happy when we get to the questions. I'm sure there may be some, but I wouldn't count on a nonstop to Albany anytime soon. I think there's less than 50 people a day going there. We are focused, in addition to the West Coast, Seattle and then San Diego is the second biggest market. We got a few years ago, we pushed really hard and we got nonstop flights to LA. One's on American and one's on Delta every day. We got the Oakland flight to the Bay Area last summer on Southwest. We'll continue to try to support that and make sure it grows. And then we're going after Seattle and San Diego as well. On the international side, you may have heard quite a bit of publicity. We continue to try to get a London flight to Europe, a nonstop. We've been talking to British Airways for a number of years. In fact, two people on my team, along with representatives from Columbus 2020 and the partnership, leave tomorrow for London to meet with British Airways on Thursday. We meet with them almost every year. We keep them completely informed about what's going on with our business community and demand for service to Europe. And it's our hope that within the not too distant future, we might have a nonstop, maybe 5 times a week to London. London right now has about 50 people a day each way from the central Ohio area. That's not a lot, though. That's less than a third of an airplane if an airline's got to fill up a lot of the planes. So first of all, we talked to the airline about people probably will drive from the Dayton area. It's close enough to fly nonstop, and that makes our market a little bigger. And we also talk about using London as a gateway where people can connect to other places in Europe or connect down to the Middle East or even Africa and India. So those are the numbers we show the airline. We also have talked to Delta about nonstop to Paris or Amsterdam. Those are other hubs, gateways, that would connect to those other parts of that part of the world. Surprisingly to a lot of people, our next market after London that's got the most demand, and it's about 40-something a day, is Tokyo. Because of Honda and all the Japanese companies in Central Ohio, we've been talking now for several years to both airlines that fly from Tokyo to the U.S., and it's still a long shot, but we continue to believe that the day will come we will have a nonstop to Tokyo. So that's it for all I had on air service. Let me shift and take the rest of my time and talk about some of the things going on in the airport itself. How many of you have flown in the last 3 years? Show of hand. Yeah. I expected most of you. You've, first of all, I want to say thank you for tolerating all of our construction. Mike mentioned $80 million. We started a little over 3 years ago. March 23rd, we will be celebrating the completion of $80 million investment in our terminal modernization. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly, but our goal was really to continue to create and enhance our travelers' experience. We are the front door to the community. We feel people flying in, that's the first thing they see. And we wanted to take an opportunity with this $80 million investment to give some local companies some opportunity to showcase some local business. And you'll see that in a moment. This slide just may be hard to see. The terminal was built in 1958. It's almost 60 years old, but you probably don't know that because we've taken good care of it. It's been added on to many times, and the last expansion was 2003 when we added some Delta gates. The building has been taken care of well. We do have the ability to handle probably between 8 and 9 million passengers. And as I mentioned, this year we're going to hit 7. So keep that number in mind when I'm going to talk in a few minutes about long-term development at Port Columbus. But we believe this $80 million is going to buy us 10 to 15 more years in the current facility. And a little over half of that went into mechanical systems, things like HVAC and boilers and technology, backbone, fiber. The rest of it went into the more aesthetic modernization. All the restrooms have been gutted, are brand new terrazzo flooring. Ticket lobby is really what started us down this journey. The picture on the left shows you how dark the ticket lobby used to be. If you've been out there lately, you know what the difference is. We've put in skylights, new flooring, new airline counters, we raised the ceiling, and it's just spectacular. The concourses, all three of them, A, B, and C, have been completely renovated, flooring, carpet, new lighting, higher ceilings, more natural light. The restrooms were all gutted, as I said, and they're all standard now. Everything is off the floor. Literally, a cleaning crew can come in and power wash, and the stalls are bigger for people pulling their wheelies and their luggage, so huge improvements. We took the opportunity to add new food and beverage and concessions. One of the things that's the most challenging is that the three concourses, Concourse A is southwest. We added Donato's, first Donato's in an airport in the country. Vino Volo is a national brand wine bar, and it's adjacent to Donato's with kind of a open walls, so you can kind of go back and forth between the two if you wanted, right there in the middle of the hold room. But one of the challenges with the three different checkpoints and the three concourses is the fact that it's really like three small terminals. People don't want to go through security checkpoint and then get something to eat and then come back out and go down to another checkpoint where their flight is. And unfortunately, we looked at trying to combine it into one big checkpoint, and there's no physical space in this building the way it's been added onto, and it would have cost close to $100 million if we could have done it. And so again, that's something that'll get solved with the future terminal. There will be one large checkpoint. But as a result, you can't have the same variety of all these restaurants and shops in all three concourses because there's not enough passengers in each one to support the volume. In Concourse B, which is our largest concourse where American and United operate out of, and soon to be Frontier and Air Canada, we opened last summer an Eddie George's Grill 27, second location in the city, and a Bob Evans Express. Both are very, very popular. Right before you go through the checkpoint for B, across from the food court in Max and Irma's, our partner who does the gift shops completely renovated and created the Short North Marketplace with some local products as well. And they also operate the Big Ten shop next door to that, the PGA golf shop. And we're also right now finishing up renovating our food court as well. A couple other things that after March 23rd, you're going to see some of these items that we're keeping kind of a little bit of a secret until the unveiling. Brushstrokes is a piece of art many of you have seen in the middle of the terminal as you go through the B checkpoint. As part of our renovation, we moved it down to the lower atrium, and we're getting ready to install it on a large, about 6-foot high base. So it'll be visible for more people to see than having to go down in front of the food court, and also having that be a little bit of a congestion problem for the security lines. The other thing, this is going to be something that I'm really excited about. The front glass of the whole terminal has for a few years had paid advertising with the James Hospital, big large banner. That is coming down, and this bright color and some images of things to do in our community, pictures of the zoo, Franklin Park Conservatory, are going to showcase on the front glass of our terminal. So when you walk out and you see this, it's going to be, I think, pretty striking. This is something, if you're out there anytime soon, you will see right inside the front door on both sides, you'll see a big curtain kind of hanging, looks like drapes, hanging over two areas. That's because we're going to keep this kind of a secret until March 23rd. And legacy of leadership is, think of it as art galleries that's going to tell the history of Port Columbus in a timeline manner. A little bit on the older part will be on one side when you come in, the newer modern history, Jerry Mock, the first woman who flew around the world. We have a bronze sculpture. It'll be in one of these legacy of leadership lounges. All of this used to be upstairs above the food court on our mezzanine that most people never got up there to see it. And Port Columbus has a really interesting part of the aviation history in this country. And I don't have time to go through it here today, but hopefully you'll leave yourself a little extra time when you come to the airport after March 23rd. But we're doing a number of things to showcase our community. We're collaborating with Experience Columbus. All the jet bridges we own and operate, we own for the airlines. We've given them to Experience Columbus to put wall wraps of exciting things to do and see in our community on all the jet bridges. So if you're waiting to get on the plane or coming off a plane, you're going to be welcomed by some bright, colorful things going on in our community. We also, working with Columbus 2020 and the partnership and Experience Columbus again, they've been trying to brand and market this community. You've seen the Columbus, the U.S. with the star. One of us is going to be a campaign that will be part of our advertising. Some of the largest employers in the community are going to be now advertising at Port Columbus, but also so that when people fly in here and they see one of us, they may say, wow, I had no idea Nationwide was headquartered here, or that Chase was such a major employer, et cetera. So we're working collaboratively to really make this an exciting front door to our community. And in a couple last minutes I have, planning for the future. Some of you may have seen some publicity. I think there was an article in the paper and probably Business First last spring. We concluded a planning study in late 2014 and started looking at the timeline for our future terminal. So when you first drive into Port Columbus, you know where the control tower is. Right before the tower is the blue lot, the blue parking lot. That is going to be where the future terminal is located. You'll have connecting pedestrian bridges across the road into a public parking garage and to a consolidated car rental facility where you'll pick up your rental cars. That whole program is estimated in yesterday dollars at $1.3 billion. We do not get any general taxpayer dollars to run the three airports. Port Columbus is financially self-sufficient. Our number one revenue source is parking, so please continue to bring us your business. $30 million in parking at the airport. Food and beverage, rental cars, airlines, those are the biggest revenue sources. Those funds, along with having to issue long-term debt that the airlines will be expected to help pay for, will help pay for that future terminal. But the key message I want you and others in the community to understand is that we're still being very proactive in planning for the future. It will take a minimum, and I want to emphasize a minimum of 10 years to build a new terminal, parking garage, car rental facility, move utilities, build the ramp, everything that has to be done to spend that $1.3 billion. So we've already started the planning effort. We've started looking at how are we going to execute something of that size. And the first phase will be the car rental facility. And so for a short term, we will have to have a quick bus from the terminal over to the new car rental facility because the car rentals are running out of space and we're running out of parking space in our current garage. If you're out there very often, you see full signs on our parking garage about 3 times a week, and we're physically directing people to any empty space. It will take us 4 years to build the car rental facility, about $140 million. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of images, pictures. That'll be the future terminal. It could be expanded. It'll start off being around 48 gates. See where the two across from the white thing, that's the terminal. The two big kind of square-looking things, the one on the right's the parking garage. The one on the left would be the car rental facility, connected over International Gateway with pedestrian bridges. To the far right on the bottom, you see kind of a long, skinny-looking thing. That's where we propose to have the future fixed-base operation, as you know probably today, Lane Aviation, and that's where the current terminal is. It'll be torn down. It'll be gone. Now, all of that will take us at least probably 15 years to remove the old terminal, even if the new one opens in 10 to 12. But right now, the forecast is that we might need that as early as 2023, 2024. We can't build it that fast. So 2026, 2027, I'm just telling folks between 2025 and 2030, but it'll be here before you know it. And that's what you might see driving in on International Gateway. Pretty exciting. You can see the tower there in the background. This is an architect's rendering of what the terminal might look like on the right. on the left, the first building is the garage, or is the car rental. The second taller one is the garage. The existing garage stays put, probably for employee parking. And we've even been bold enough to be futuristic and show a potential light rail. The blue right up by the front of the terminal building, not on the, down up by the road, that's a rail, that's a train. We're designing and holding right of way to make sure that if the city ever gets rail, we're positioned to handle it at the airport. So that's the vision, that's where we're moving. It's a lot of work, we're excited. In the meantime, we're gonna have a great existing facility that'll last us at least 10 or 15 years. And when you hear people talk about, why are they talking about a new terminal when they just spent $80 million? $80 million's a drop in the bucket to last us 10 or 15 more years. With that, I'm gonna open it up. I know I've taken all my time. I've a few minutes left for some questions, if you want. Where do you want your flight to go to?
I'm pretty good right now.
Oh, good, thank you.
Your runway capacity and length, are you in good shape in that regard?
We are. In fact, on this photo, at the bottom where it looks like all the big green spaces, that's the new runway that opened a little less than 3 years ago. It was the same length as the one it replaced, but the reason we spent the money for a new runway so close to the other one, it was 702 feet further south, and that was important because we have 2 parallel runways, the one on either side of that terminal building. They're far enough apart now for simultaneous operations. Planes can land and take off at the same time. Before, they were too close, and so air traffic control had to stagger the planes on arrival. So we have all the airfield capacity with these 2 runways, and it's not so much about length. The biggest airplane in the world can land on over 10,000 feet, which is what we have. Rickenbacker has 2 12,000-foot runways, and we have the wide-body 747-8 freighters flying in and out of there today on the nonstop flights from Hong Kong and Dubai. It's more about weight than it is length, unless you're in some place like Denver and you need a 16,000-foot runway because of the elevations. Yes, sir.
How much do you spend on Wi-Fi service, and you give it away, and are you leaving money on the table, or what's your value proposition?
You know, I don't know what it costs. We just spent a little over $1 million enhancing the Wi-Fi. We now have some of the fastest Wi-Fi in the country of any airport. We were one of the first to have free Wi-Fi, and we feel very strongly about making it free. We also, I would put us up against any other airport. We put 2,000 plus free plug-ins in all the gate areas. And the hold room seating, so that people aren't sitting on the floor and trying to find a plug for their devices. Believe it or not, the average person today has between 3 and 4 devices they carry. They're streaming movies, they've got a work computer, they've got some tablet, they've got a cell phone. It's amazing, and it just, the power, you know, the broadband that it takes is huge, and we've just done a major project to put in more enhancements to that. So I couldn't tell you what it costs. I can tell you on the 2,000 power outlets, we did something very creative. We put solar panels on the roof of the terminal that pretty much pay for those power outlets. But it's all about customer service. We're in the customer business. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The capacity of the new airport, how many passengers can you handle on a daily basis? Like, what's the overall yearly flights and whatnot?
So that's a real hard question. The 48 gates right now being built, proposed to be built in the new terminal, would handle a little over 10 million passengers, 10 or 11. There's not a magical number when you talk capacity in an airport terminal, because let's just say your number was 8 million and you hit 8 million passengers on November 15th, you don't shut down the airport. So it's really about peak hour. So on an airport like ours, where we don't have a lot of connecting flights, it's every gate is full early in the morning. Come out to the airport between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning. They're all taking off in that first hour or so, and getting through security is one of the choke points. And getting to the front of the building and dropping off people or picking up people is another choke point. So the real challenge is, as TSA has changed equipment at the security checkpoints, we've expanded lanes. And let me give you one quick example, because I know we're running out of time. Concourse C is Delta. Delta, we have several gates that are empty, and we were going to put Frontier down there. Well, we expanded Concourse A, and we expanded Concourse B security checkpoints. C had 3 lanes sufficient for 600 passengers per hour on 3 lanes total. Delta is adding a lot of flights, more seats, I should say, in May, bigger airplanes. And today, those 3 lanes are only operating at about 450 people per peak hour because of processing, the way TSA is handling it, and 1 lane is the pre-check lane, and it's not being heavily used. So Delta said, we are very concerned. We're going to have 600 people an hour, and you can't handle us. And that's with half the concourse empty, with empty gates. So there's all kinds of capacity issues. So we're looking at how to expand the Concourse C checkpoint when there's physically no real room down there to do it. We're taking the old business center and creating a couple of lanes and have to work with TSA to put more equipment in there. And as a result of that, we're taking the Frontier and moving them to Concourse B when they start operations in the end of May, because we have more capacity. So it's just all kinds of things when you start talking about a capacity. It's not a simple passenger number, but that future terminal will be expandable, could be up to 15 million passengers without a problem. One more question, I know we're out of time.
No, last question.
Yes.
TSA PreCheck a solution to managing volume?
Yes, definitely. In fact, they are trying to get more people across the country to register for pre-check, because you've been vetted then, you don't have to take your shoes off, you can go through a faster lane, and the more volume that can go through the pre-check lane, the more time they can focus on the other lanes where they can look for the people that maybe haven't had the background check. So it's a risk, mitigating strategy. So
It's a pretty difficult process, however. I mean, it's a pretty arduous, you have to go to a place on Morse Road, you have to pay money, $65, $75.
it's not free, but it's good for a few years, and I will tell you, if you travel more than once or twice a year, it pays for itself. It is definitely worth doing. I definitely would recommend it. I will stay around a little bit if you have any questions when we're done, but thank you all very much for your attention.
Elaine, thank you for everything you and your team do to keep us a viable economic hub and also a great place to fly out of for vacations. Please accept this. It's a donation to the Rotary International Foundation as a symbol of our appreciation. And come back again.
All right, thank you.
We still have a seat out here for you. All right, everyone. Next week, David Decker, the president of Franklin University, will be our speaker. In the meantime, be a Rotarian all week long.